So my name is Michael Renaud. I live here in Nova Scotia. I brought in today a photo album that was put together by my father-in-law, Don Buckler. He was a door gunner on a Halifax aircraft in the Second World War, bailed out of that aircraft and became a prisoner of war and ultimately escaped from the POW camp and made his way back to Allied lines.
Even war has rules, though not all nations abide by them. The Geneva Convention set out how World War II prisoners were to be treated. The Soviet Union hadn't signed on, and consequently, half of the Soviet soldiers captured by the Germans died, compared to less than 4% of Commonwealth prisoners of war. Life in a Nazi prison camp was difficult. The barracks were cold, food was scarce, and punishment for misbehavior was harsh. The lure to escape was strong. But of the 170,000 Commonwealth POWs held by the Germans, fewer than 1,200 made it to freedom. The journey to safety was long and dangerous, and capture could mean execution.
What have you brought for us today? It's kind of an interesting story, and I think it's a great story. So,
I brought a photo album here that belonged to my father-in-law, Donald Buckler. He was a gunner on a Halifax aircraft during the Second World War. He was shot down in March 1944, and he's kept all of his memorabilia in this album, including the telegraphs and telegrams that went out to his parents advising that he was shot down, some letters that went back and forth between Don and his mom and his dad. And this is his collection of all of his memorabilia from that time.
what do you know about the story?
Wow. Okay. What do I know about the story? I know that on March the 15th, they took off from a base, they being the RCAF aircraft, Halifax type of aircraft, took off from their base in the United Kingdom for a sortie over Stuttgart. They were intercepted by a Luftwaffe aircraft. My father, Don, returned fire, but eventually the aircraft that they were in was declared disabled and the captain advised to abandon the ship. Everybody bailed out of the aircraft, including my father-in-law, Don. He landed safely, with the exception of a broken shoulder, near the zoo in Frankfurt and was captured by German citizens and turned over to the German army, at which time he was taken to a POW camp. Towards the end of the war, a determination was made by the German army to move these soldiers somewhere. We're not quite sure where, but they got them all together and marched them out onto the road, marched them all day long to a large field where they told them they could go and lay down and rest for the night. My father-in-law did with a friend of his, but they took the opportunity to hide under some leaves and chop down trees. They stayed underneath the foliage the next morning when the German army woke them up and marched all the soldiers off. The only problem was they left two behind, which of course was my father-in-law Don and his friend Pete. They escaped from the foliage and made their way back to Allied lines and were subsequently repatriated back to Canada.
On the night of March 15, 16, 1944, this particular raid was on Stuttgart in Germany. 1,161 aircraft were deployed, the largest raid at that particular point. The RAF Bombing Command was selecting industrial targets and also the cities at this point. And in 2 months' time, they would start focusing on going after the coastal defenses of France. So it was the last real push building up for the invasion in 1944. So let's see the archive that you brought today here. There's one particular item here I actually have cheated and looked at it already, but but I actually want to point this out to you. So this is his Caterpillar Club membership certificate.
He was very proud of this.
Right. So what that is the Irving Parachute Company, which made the parachute that he bailed out with, and it's signed by Leslie Irving is actually the signature on it.
Wow.
This was given to everyone that successfully bailed out of it. And there was also a gold pin that looked exactly like the Caterpillar that fit on their lapels, and that was included with it. And they sent it to him. But what's really kind of interesting with this particular note is it's actually sent to him in the prison camp in Germany, where he's a guest of the Luftwaffe.
Wow.
And that's actually his address. So they would have sent it to him as he was in.
Well, he must have got it.
Yeah, and brought it back with him. Actually, obviously kept it enough, and maybe this traveled back with him through the pockets.
Group 97, it looks like where the prison camp maybe stamped it when they got
That's
it.
right. Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're seeing. And it looks like the original signature of that. So
That's incredible.
The process to actually send it out to obviously if they were prisoners of war and they bailed out, that's what they sent it through. So the system was obviously working that he received that. So.
And the gold pin is still in his artifacts back in Bear River. So the gold pin did come through with it.
That's good, because again, obviously that's the key to that, and you can always see that with that particular.
Wow. You know, I think when he pointed out that Dad's Caterpillar Club letter went to the POW camp as opposed to coming back here to Canada was fascinating. I hadn't noticed that before. I'd looked at the letter, dozens of times and had never noticed that. So that was great.
So I'd like to thank you, Michael, for bringing this fantastic collection of items from your family archives.
You're welcome.
What's the long-term plans here? What's going to happen to the archive?
Well, this has to remain in our family. Don has grandsons and granddaughters that are certainly more than interested in this. He has a granddaughter lives in Los Angeles that keeps his medals, and she has expressed her interest in this. So it definitely has to remain in the family.
And obviously, it's a great story that we've learned a bit more about today, and obviously you can add to this archive as well now too, and I think that's another takeaway from today, is that you'll be able to add more to the story.
Absolutely. I've learned things here today that I would have never known without you. Thank you.
Don's story is about a Nova Scotian boy going to war, and I think it's all about maintaining the history. It's important that a relatively young man can go to war, do his service, survive it, and then actually going on to lead a relatively normal life.
You know, I think it's important that we keep this history, that we're able to remember it so that our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren can see this stuff and understand, what it was like back in the 1940s.